What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be doing a camera comparison test between the new iPhone 12, the Google Pixel 5, and the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. Now, there's a lot to go over here with these three phones. I have a ton of picture and video samples to show you. I don't want to waste any time, so let's just go ahead and get right into it, and I'll offer up some commentary along the way. To start things off, here is what we're working with as far as selfies are concerned. The iPhone offers a 12 megapixel f2.2 aperture selfie lens. The Pixel has an 8 megapixel f2.0 shooter, and the S20 FE actually has a 32 megapixel f2.2 camera up front. But specs aside, I think you can see already that each of these phones produces a pretty different standard shot. Everything from the color of my sweater to the trees in the background, even my skin tone, it's all different on each phone. And to me, in this instance, I think I like the look of the iPhone the most. For starters, my blue sweater is the right shade here. The Pixel, for some reason, is almost giving it a purple tint, while the S20 FE bumps up the color a little more than how it actually is in real life. Though the rest of the scene on the S20 FE, like the leaves in the background, seem almost lacking in color, which is sort of interesting. Also, my skin tone seems to be a bit better, I think, on both the iPhone and the Pixel actually, while the S20 appears a bit more pale and also renders my skin to be more smooth and porcelain-like. Detail-wise, I do think all three of these phones are comparable, interestingly enough. I'm kind of having a hard time seeing any noticeable differences there, and with the overall shot, I think the S20 FE picture is just a little too cool in color temperature for me. Surprisingly undersaturated with the background, like I said, and just a bit duller than what I would have liked. Jumping over to portrait mode, a lot of what I said already can sort of be said again with like the color and the temperature, but focusing most on the foreground and background separation and detail, once again, I was surprised to see not a whole lot of discrepancies here. All three phones do a great job outlining my hair, which can definitely be tricky. Everything else with my head and face is also on point. I think maybe you get the most detail with the Pixel here. You can almost see like the pores in my forehead, while they're less prevalent on the iPhone and gone entirely with the S20 FE. All in all, these three phones do offer a lot with their selfie cameras, and even the S20 FE maybe being a little more different than the other two, you really can't go wrong with any of them. So jumping to the rear camera setup here, there's definitely a lot to dissect, and I'll sort of take it one picture at a time. Now, in general, like you might expect, each phone has its own little tendencies that are consistent throughout the shots. So for example, the S20 FE I often feel produces the most colorful looking shot. It's pretty saturated in comparison, and in some instances that actually makes the scene look really nice. Here, I think just at a glance, the S20 FE's picture is the most eye-catching, but maybe not the most accurate. The Pixel 5 still produces the most true-to-life representation of this scene. The sky is a little duller, which is how it was in real life. The water certainly wasn't as blue as it looks in the S20 FE. The iPhone falls somewhere in between, a little more saturated than the Pixel, but still nowhere near the S20 FE. And a great-looking shot, though, for sure. Another thing I noticed across the board, really, was the white balance of each phone. Different scenes produced widely different results. So in this sort of example, you can see the iPhone 12 has like a bluish tint, the S20 is a bit brighter, a bit whiter, and the Pixel 5 here falls kind of in between. But these tendencies weren't always the case for every shot. So here, for example, the iPhone is actually a bit warmer. Instead, the S20 FE now seems to have more of a bluish tint, though less extreme, and the Pixel 5 probably gets the white balance right. But this is another instance where maybe the S20 FE is the more pleasing shot, considering all the factors overall. And this is just based on how it offers a punchier red color with the rose petals, for example, and brighter shades of green on the stem and the moss on the rocks. If you want the most detail in your shot, this is where I think the Pixel 5 still outshines the competition. It's tough to see at a glance, but when you take a closer look at this portrait shot here, you can see the lines and texture in this acorn are significantly sharper with the Pixel. The iPhone does a nice job keeping up, and the S20 FE is probably the furthest behind. Now, this is obviously a very specific shot. You won't always be taking pictures like this, but But when we jump over to a broad picture of this bridge and we get a close-up of that sign above it, you can see the text looks pretty sharp with the Pixel. The iPhone again keeps up. It's actually pretty close with these two phones. But to me, the S20 FE is noticeably worse by comparison. And sticking with this shot here, again, you can really see just how different the shades blue in the sky with the S20 are. It almost kind of doesn't look real. Same with the vibrant green in the trees on the side. Very colorful and very saturated, but perhaps a little too much. With the wide-angle cameras, these phones once again do things a little differently across the board. And the first big thing I do want to point out actually is the field of view. The iPhone offers about 120 degrees. The S20 FE is a tiny bit wider at 123 degrees, but the Pixel 5 only offers 107 degrees of view. And basically what that means is, which you can probably see here, you don't get as wide and as broad of a shot. So in some instances, you may not necessarily be able to fit as much in your picture with the Pixel compared to the iPhone or the S20 FE. Now, that's one downside to using the Pixel 5's wide angle, but on the plus side, the distortion in the shot is way less on the Pixel. You don't get that sort of long, elongated look that might seem a little funny sometimes. Now, I think all three phones do a nice job keeping things consistent when going from the standard lens to the wide angle lens. You really don't get too much of a difference in like color temperature or exposure, for example. But if I have to pick out something, I think I actually like the Pixel 5's wide angle camera the least. You might be able to tell that there are certain instances, especially in less than ideal lighting conditions, where things get maybe lost in the shadows. And in fact, I think the S20 FE does a better job than the iPhone in certain instances too. Another area where the S20 FE shines is when it comes to zooming in, which should come as no surprise since the S20 FE offers a third lens, a telephoto lens, while the iPhone 12 and Pixel 5 don't offer that. So for example, we've got this wide angle shot of the signing room, but when you utilize the 3x digital zoom on the iPhone and the Pixel and 3x optical zoom on the S20 FE utilizing that dedicated telephoto lens, you can just see way more detail in the chair and everything on the desk, and even the design up across the top there. And honestly, if I had to pick one area where the Pixel 5 is probably the weakest across the board, it is with its digital zoom capabilities. When the lights go down, just like with everything else, these phones almost always produce some pretty different looking shots. And a thing I just want to mention, with the iPhone 12, this device can utilize night mode with a wide angle for the first time, and with the selfie cameras too. So that now allows it to be a bit more competitive in comparison versus last year's iPhone 11. To be honest, it seems like with one shot, I might like one phone, and with another, I might like a different phone. It's not very helpful, I know, but it's interesting to see just how consistently inconsistent all these results can be. The Pixel might be able to handle more variety of low light conditions better, especially in like super dark shots. While the iPhone surprises me from time to time, there are instances where it is certainly the best. With the S20 FE, this phone I think almost artificially brightens the scene in some instances more so than the other two, and that might make things look a little unnatural. But this is where I'm actually going to ask you guys, which phone do you think takes the best nighttime shots? Jumping over to video, we've got some 4K 30 FPS samples here, and what surprised me most is just how good the Pixel and the S20 FE were compared to the iPhone, which you guys might know more often than not is like automatically declared the best phone for video. I do think the S20 lags behind a little bit when lighting conditions aren't ideal, but I don't really hate any of the results here. Stabilization is fairly consistent across the board. There may be a tiny bit of jittering from time to time with the Pixel, but all in all, I wouldn't be unhappy to shoot with any of these phones. I think the iPhone is probably still the best overall, especially when you consider the potential Dolby Vision support for professionals, but for the average everyday consumer, any one of these phones will perform quite well in video. So I do have quite a few more samples I want to show you guys. I'm just going to go ahead and let them play through here. Feel free to stop and critique them all you want, and I'll meet back up with you guys at the end of this video. All in all, I have to say I'd be super happy with any one of these three phones. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. The iPhone to me has the best selfie camera, the Pixel offers the most detail in a given shot, the S20 FE produces bold, bright, very vibrant looking pictures that people seem to like, and it has that useful telephoto lens too. But what do you guys think? Which phone did you like most? Which one would you prefer? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.